Well, good. We're going to go ahead and get started and get stuff rolling here. Um, I'm Dave Lowe. I'm the CEO of isiFederal. I'm glad you guys are here today, and we have some pretty good stuff here for you. Jamie, you've just been hearing Jamie. He's our GSA specialist and is also working with us in our sales department too. So say hey, Jamie, one more time.
Well, good morning, everybody. Hope you're having a great day today. We got some nice stuff coming your way, and always good things in our program, and we're glad to have you sitting in with us and learning how to unveil and go after and win more business with the federal government.
Awesome. That's great. I appreciate you being here, Jamie, very much. And today we have a special guest, Mr. Smith. Are you there?
You hear me, Dave?
Yeah, I can, as a matter of fact. How are you?
Let me kind of turn this up here. I'm trying to turn my volume up because
All right. Well, good deal. I'm introducing you as Mr. Smith, and if you want to share your first name, you're welcome to share your first name. The tall, dark, and handsome man that's on here is a GSA contracting specialist up with the Public Building Service up in New England. And before you even say anything, I got to do the next slide, which is a disclaimer since you're here. Anytime we have somebody from the government here, and we do that regularly, but is a disclaimer that it's not affiliated with the GSA or any other agency. It's provided for informational purposes. All the participation in this briefing is voluntary, and any engagement by government personnel, and there's other folks that pop in from time to time, it is not an indication of endorsement of or commitment to purchase from any vendor. Everybody got that? So everybody, we can just talk plainly here. And so, Mr. Smith, you want to tell everybody who you are?
sure.
All right.
First of all, let me correct something. Dave called me a contracting specialist, contracting officer. I am the director of the New England Office of Small Business Utilization. So my job is basically to support small businesses towards finding opportunities within GSA and the federal sector and those companies, those agencies that actually use our federal schedule program. So we're really our sole reason for existing is to help small business find opportunities within the federal space, especially within GSA. And
And
because GSA touches so many other agencies with our schedules and buys, and we also provide, leasing services, and also we're the federal landlord. That encompasses almost everybody. So we're a big player in that game of federal contracting, and we're also one of the components that write the FAR, which is Federal Acquisition Regulation.
all right, so I do want to
Yeah,
get
there we
into
go.
what's
Mr.
happening
Smith.
up in New England. I do want to get there, and I appreciate you being here, Jerry. Jerry and I had a great conversation the other day. I was actually calling on behalf of one of our clients to talk about things that were happening up there, and and the reason why I think it's really important is that we wound up talking about how things really work and the patterns that are out there, and we're going to talk about some of those and dialogue on those. So, real quick, before we get started about this, the idea is to connect with experts that are in the federal space. A lot of folks that are on this are also already in the federal space. To dialogue on it, help you crack the federal code, and to show us off just a little bit to let you know what we do and how we can help you with that. The biggest, the numbers that matter most, and I think I'm gonna mute Jerry because I think Jerry's feeding back on me. I'll get to you, Jerry. The numbers that matter most, 204 and 569. If you don't know what those are, we'll get to those in a little bit. But before we do, real quick questions. If you have any questions, pop it in down here on the right hand side. You can open that pattern up. I mean the panel on the right hand side up, and you can enter your audio pin also. If you called in on the phone, make sure that you enter your audio pin in that's shown there so that we can dialogue. And one of the ways I want to do that is if you would tell us why you're here today. There's a lot of folks that already told us why you're here, but if you could let us know why you're here, and then we'll be able to address some of those questions specifically that you would like to that you would like to talk about. So open that panel on the right hand side and type it in. So real quick about the sponsors, isiFederal, we do business development in the space. We're responsible for helping clients reach their federal goals. We start with intelligence, understanding what that market is about. Real quick testimonial about that is we find things that that other folks simply can't find on their own. The information is out there. We just aggregate it a little bit differently and make sure we go after the folks that are behind that. We provide marketing services. We do vehicle development. Jerry mentioned that, what GSA schedules. That's what Jamie's responsible for, and some other development for IDIQs and BPAs. And we have 100% track record in developing those. Jamie, I'm going to blow past this. We'll talk about you a little bit later. We also provide a dedicated representation in the space. And the fact of the matter is people buy from people they like, and our job is to help them to know who they are, to find them, and to get them to like you. We do that through events, and in some of the things that you see in the industry events. We do that by promoting and getting set up as featured speakers at events and also online, where we can do briefings and pull people in so that you become the subject matter expert. We do stalk decision makers when it comes to anybody in the senior positions in the government, as well as even mid-level decision makers that really do have a lot of budget capability and influence. Also, we do feet on the street in Washington, D.C. and Maryland and Virginia, where you need us most. And that's where we spend most of our time. We do travel from time to time, but most of that happens here. We have tens of millions of dollars in direct and indirect federal sales that we've done on behalf of our clients in many different agencies. These are just a few, but to give you an idea of where we are and how we operate. And we have clients across the board in many different places. The other folks that I'd like to point you to are Revolution Payment Systems. They do merchant card services with level 3 payment compliance. And what that means is you can reduce your rates with somebody that understands the government. And if you're doing credit card transactions, you got to pay attention to this, because if you're paying over 1.5 points, you can actually drive that down even below 1.5 points. And this is bottom line dollars, folks. And I don't get anything from these guys. A lot of my clients use them because they understand the government and can help them get them paid. So why are we here today? Go ahead and open that up and tell me why you're here, and type in your questions on the right-hand side, and I'm going to go through some of those now. April, if I learn who to contact within the VA and active duty. Great question, April. For Jan, learn how to win some contracts. There you go. I love it. Cheryl, finding winnable opportunities. Love that word, winnable. Cheryl, that's a great one. Craig, getting ahead of the RFP. We're actually going to be talking about that today for you, Craig, and some others. Kelly, help get GSA completed. There you go. We can certainly talk about that. Jason, it helped me break into the federal market and provide real insight and not attend vendor days advice like other webinars. Hey, Jerry, let's talk about that real quick about vendor days.
Vendor days, you know, we do offer vendor days within GSA on different programs. I think it's important that you go to vendor days. Here's why. Going to vendor days is just a way of networking. That you will walk away with a contract is probably not going to happen.
Right.
But what you want to walk away with people who are in that decision process making, or who can influence that process making, who know you and know about your company. Because a lot of times when we do market research at the federal level, we'll often hear that, well, we can't find those companies. When you go to vendor days, the small business representatives, whether they're in industry like IBM or Raytheon, can always say, no, there are these companies that do that. We know there are companies out there. We've seen them at vendor days. So it's a little bit harder to push down the fact that small businesses don't exist when you're basically pushing away from you every vendor day you go to. We know you exist. We know that the only thing we have to do is either we have to show you what we can bring to you to help your company, because a lot of times it's about whether or not you want to go for that work, if you have the resources to even go after federal work or state work or even local work. And so that's why vendor days is very important for you to showcase your company.
I don't have a problem necessarily. We'll talk about this a little bit more, because one of the heartburns about it is that by being involved in the vendor days, sometimes for the companies that are not playing by the rules, that gives them a reason to be able to just say, well, we're trying, right? So that's one of the things we'll talk about that. Jerry and I were talking about that. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. I'm not saying not to do vendor days. Go in with your eyes open and make sure that you know what you're doing, and we'll give you some insight on how that works. And Lori, find these agencies that no one markets to. Love that. Love it, love it, love it. When you're looking for agencies that are under the radar, there's plenty of them out there. Karen, interested in as much information as possible prior to initiating first proposal. Great, because you want to know everything you can about what's going on in that agency before you decide that you're going to actually go ahead and propose, right? Barath, I'll get a strategy of how small companies should target the opportunities without agency past performance. Past performance is critical, and it's a classic catch-22, chicken and the egg, whatever you want to call it. It's like, hey, man, you got to have past performance to win a contract, but you can't win a contract because you don't have past performance. And how are you going to get past performance if you don't have a contract? So there's ways to be able to do that as well. Kurt, get the doors open. Love it. Renee, develop other contract vehicles other than GSA, I believe. For Sonny, identify federal buyer and the chance to bid. Just getting in the game, right, Sonny? That's great. Laurel, identify opportunities within our space and learn about what they're looking for in proposals. Super. All right. If you have any other ones, let me know. Jerry is very garbled, says John Griffin. I agree. It's hard for us to understand you, Jerry. And I was kind of muting you. I think you're coming in on your computer, and if you want, I can send you, or you can call in on a regular phone line. Would you think that would be better, Jerry, for calling a regular phone line if you're a little bit garbled?
Yeah, let me try that as a backup before
All right, cool. And if all you need to do is go to that audio, there's an audio tab there, and you can click telephone, and it'll pop up with a phone number, and you'll be able to dial right back in. All right, thank you very much for that, John. Appreciate that. 93% of the folks here need help with business development, and that's actually what we do. And one of the things we do is put out free. There's an ebook that I wrote. It was revised last year. And it goes through the myths, why 80% fail. And I'm telling you, that drives me crazy. Some of that has to do with the processes and the way things work. And here's my philosophy. First, you got to get smart about the marketplace and go through this process in order to get to a place where you can win. Today, we're going to be talking about getting smart. We're talking about building those relationships with the stakeholders. Who are those stakeholders? What do they do? And what do they need from you? And then ultimately getting to a place where you can improve your position so that you can win. It's a long-term process. The federal space is not a lightning speed thing. You can't just jump in and say, hey, this is going to be great. And even folks that have gotten lucky and won things find out that even though they've been in, they have a hard time being able to grow. So making sure that we have that. So we've been talking about what's been on my mind for the past 3 months has been disrupting the current pattern. The current pattern is whatever's happening out there in the marketplace that you're not involved in. It goes through a cyclical nature, whether it's time-wise or whether it's the way that they go about their buying. And before I get into the pattern for today, I want to review some of the things that we've done before. First of all, the SBA pattern, and I don't want to bust on Jerry because I love Jerry, but this is the same. We talked about this the other day, and we were going back and forth, and I don't want you to not say exactly what's on your mind. I just want to make sure that we're in the same spot. The pattern is to get on a GSA schedule, watch FBO, monitor eBuy, meet with the OSBUs, and that includes Jerry. Go to small business matchmaking events. We talked about that. Register for prime vendor databases and do your capabilities. That goes to the capability statement repository. A lot of times, the statement repository is the circular file. Not because they're not interested, is they just don't even know you yet. So what we want to do is we want to break away from this current pattern or augment that pattern, utilize the Jerry Smiths in order to be able to get you where you want to go. Because and Jerry Are you back
Yeah.
on? Let's see.
Can you hear me now?
Oh man, that is so much better.
Way
So,
better.
so this is the SBA pattern, and we busted on this pretty good the other day in our conversation. And I don't want you to violate any of the rules or get you in trouble. My thing is to challenge folks to help you get to the people that they need to get to. And so tell us about the folks that actually do this right. Outside of this pattern, what are some of the things that you see that are critically important for them to do?
Well, the first thing you need to do is make a business decision about the schedule. The schedule is not for everybody, and that's one of the things we teach. We actually offer a class once a month in Boston where we go over this in conjunction with GSA, SBA, and the Massachusetts PTAC. And the first thing we ask people is to really do an analysis of whether or not they need to be on schedule. Can you sell your goods and services to the federal government without a schedule? And most of the time the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Because if you have a solution to a problem we're having, we will find a way to get to you. So that's just as honest as I can be. If you have a solution to a problem that we have, we will find a way to get to you.
Did you hear that, folks? Listen to what he said. If there's a need, they will find a way to get to you. Now, let me ask you this, Jerry. Well, I'm going to get to it in a minute, but that is critical. So it's not just a GSA schedule. Now I'll throw this in that sometimes if you don't have a GSA schedule, the buyers will say, I don't have time to teach you how to do business with the government. You ever heard that before?
We hear that all the time. We hear people, well, I went to talk to the VA and the VA sent me to you. And I'm like, but the VA is the one who manages all medical supplies. They actually manage the GSA schedule, so why would they be sending you to GSA? They are the subject knowledge experts. They control that schedule. You'll often find when you go to talk to anybody, especially agent, they say, oh, you're on schedule. Well, that's almost like one saying, I ain't got time for you. Because if that's the first thing that comes out of your mind, rather than what do you have, what type of solution are you bringing to us? Do you understand our business? Those are the type of questions you want to hear. First of all, you want to understand who you're talking to, and you want to understand that they have problems. And then even more important, that you want to understand they've got money to fix those problems. And then you go to them and you say, I have a solution to your problem. I've looked at your data. I've looked at your personnel, and you have this need, and I can fulfill that need, and here's my solution. But for someone to automatically go to, do you have a GSA schedule, is almost like that thing, like, I really don't have time for you. What's the weather like outside?
That's right.
Really not. It's basically the kiss off.
That's right. They're blowing you off, man.
So, and I always tell the companies that we counsel the fact that when someone says, do I have a schedule? If you do, you say yes. Now let's talk about the solutions I can offer you to your issues. If you don't have a schedule, you ask this question: if I had a schedule, would you be willing to do business with me today?
Boom!
If the answer is no, I don't know if we really need what you offer, then why would you go invest in a schedule? The schedule investment of time and money for any business. And when I was in startups, we stayed away from the schedules. We did, because we didn't have the time or interest to put our money into it. We were trying to sell where there were sales, not create sales. And that's one thing about the schedule. It's a vehicle to create sales, but it doesn't guarantee you anything.
Doesn't guarantee.
And in business, you got to have a foundation of sales in order to survive.
That's exactly
and you cannot keep waiting for a contracting officer to call you up, because that is so rare these days.
That's right.
That someone's going to call you and say, I've got this great offer. I want to buy 20,000 of your widgets. No. They're going to put a RFP or an RFI out there and say, if you've got widgets, we may be interested in buying them in 2020.
Yeah.
Well, what are you going to do to 2020?
That's right.
So you do have to think this. I always think of it that, we have to get away from this thing that the government goals are really mandates, because they're not mandates.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? You're killing me. It's awesome. Listen to what he's saying.
They're not mandates.
Okay.
They're goals, and we try hard to meet those goals. But at the same time, at the end of the day,
I have yet to see anybody get fired because they didn't meet those goals.
Oh,
I've yet to see anybody lose their bonus because they didn't meet those goals. Yes, there's an incentive for us to do it, and we try hard to do it, but at the end of the day, it's about the mission, not about those goals,
all
because
right.
those are just what they are, goals.
And that, Jerry, you're spot on. It's what I preach all the time. So one of the things I'm going to do, and I'm going to, part of this is, and let me tell you, the reason why I love Jerry is not part of the problem. Jerry's not sucked into the same old that creates the problem, because the problem is for small business liaisons and Oz the Booze and the folks, some of those folks don't even have any contract experience at all, and they have zero sales experience in being able to understand how business really operates. And all I need is a yes or a no. That's true, Jerry.
That's true.
That's right. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to say, in addition to this, I want to go past this, and I want to get into what really happens. The fact of the matter is people buy from people they like, period. And sometimes they like you because you got like the most rocking thing, and they need what you got. That may be the reason that they like you, but the bottom line is your job is simple. You got to find them and get them to like you, period. It's not complicated. It becomes an issue because of the timelines. And like Jerry says, we might buy those widgets in 2020. What are you going to do for the next 5 years? What are you going to do? You still got, what you need to do is find the people that are buying your widgets now and inject yourself into the pattern that they have. And that pattern we'll talk about in just a minute. The fact is, if people are buying for people they like, if it's not you, then who is it? It's your primary competition that they're buying from. They're buying from them. And I'm going to show you a little bit about how I look at the marketplace and how I want my team to go about it. And we do research and we find out this information, and we find these folks that are buying from the competition. We do an assessment, and we say, where is the market for this? And who's responsible for it? And Jerry mentioned earlier, so you might have somebody in the VA, and that you tell you why that you might not get through, and they throw you over the fence to GSA in just a minute. But these are the folks: $4.5 million from one guy, $1.7 million from another guy, 21 contracts across that. We see this all the time. We see it all the time. And these are people that are buying from your primary competition. They can be major agencies like the Army, or they can be some other agencies like NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, right? So they're not always the big boys, right? Here's the current pattern. And Jerry, I just want you to tell me whether this is true. They already have resources. They're already satisfied with those resources. They have existing contracts with those resources. The federal buyers don't like change, and they already have relationships with these folks that they're successful with. Is that true?
Yes.
So
all of those are true.
All of these are true. So
that's where you break in. You got to break in there somewhere.
That's right. So in order to break that in, if we know that these are the folks that are doing the purchases, the number of contracts on the left, the total dollars on the right, if we can find those people and we know who these people are, then we can go and talk about what this pattern is. This pattern relates to those contracts that are directly going to your competition, and those competitors are the resources that they're satisfied with, that have existing contracts, that don't want to change from those existing relationships. That's what it is. So this is exactly what Jerry said. You've got to inject yourself in this. You have got to disrupt that current pattern if you want to win. But if you're going into it thinking, I got the greatest thing since sliced bread, and I got a GSA schedule, or I got this, or I got that, you're missing the fact that they already are satisfied in the most instances. Now, I will take you down the 80-20 rule, which is 20% of those will never, ever, ever change. 20% of those are so locked down with relationships and successful resources that you will never, ever get in. 20%. 80% of those will have a weakness from time to time. It could be that they're screwing something up. It could be that there's change internally in the organization. that they're not aware of. The contracting officer changes, or the program manager changes. Somebody else comes in, wants to put their fingerprints on it from above. Whatever it happens to be, there are weaknesses. And the one thing I will say about this current pattern is that the people who are incumbents have the biggest risk of loss. You don't have anything to lose because you don't have anything yet. So our job and your job is to get that and disrupt that pattern. So real quick, of the things that we talked about before: identifying agency decision makers. Get yourself organized. Find where the work is being done. Jerry just said that. Look for the very important top officer, veto. Look for as high as you can get there. You don't have to go to President Obama to get a referral there, but you can get a referral. You identify the key people in the decision-making chain, and we'll talk about that. Identify the bosses and peers, and contact the highest level you can reach. Now, I love Jerry because Jerry would work for me. But I'm telling you, most of the time, if you're going to an Osnabu, they're going to go grab the same 7 pieces of paper, and they're going to give them to you. Check FBO, go make sure you do GSA, e-buy, blah, 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 wah, 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 Charlie Brown. They're going to tell you the same things. In this instance, we're going to talk, and so we want to get above and around that and leverage your small business liaison. Give them the juice that they need to pull those people in the meetings. We talked about manufacturing referrals. This, by definition, is manufacturing referral from somebody you don't know to somebody you don't know. And we talk, and that is, here's the process for that. I'm not even going to go through it. Just know that we did it before. Look it up on YouTube, or if you really want to know about this, I'll get you a link to that. But this is the process of knowing who you want to reach, getting and talk with somebody and get a referral. Persuasive phone tactics. We did this last time. Last time, people remember an insignificant event for 21 days. What does that mean? That means if you're not touching them every 21 days, you're getting forgotten. And you've got to make sure that you are persistent. Going as if you're friends already. Act as if you like each other already. Before it even happens, put yourself in the future. Being different is good. Make sure you knock people off center a little bit so they pay attention to what you're doing. And more importantly than anything is what's in it for them. What is in it for them? And finally, be you. Don't be somebody else. Don't try to be somebody else. Be the best you can possibly be. So those are key principles there. And in this instance, we're going to be talking about getting ahead of the RFP. Because guess what? There's RFPs hitting the street every single day. And Jerry, just out of curiosity, how many of those RFPs were influenced before they hit the street?
Well, usually the process is that there's a discussion about where the work is going to go and what type of work it is, and any companies that we dealt with in the past. So, but there is some influence, but usually the statement of work drives who's going to respond.
Absolutely.
We monitor that. The whole reason for the OSBU is to monitor it to make sure that don't happen too often.
That doesn't happen too often. So I'm gonna talk about it, and Jerry, you can knock me upside the head if I'm wrong. And my whole rule, here's my rule number 1. If you didn't influence the scope, somebody else did. It may be an influence scope that's 10 years ago. IBM was talking to somebody in the program chain, and the verbiage gets just replicated throughout. And it's something that oftentimes, if they did an RFP already, they'll go back to another RFP or another RFP somebody agency did, right? And they'll include some of that verbiage from time to time as they develop their new piece. If you talk about cloud computing, where do you think all that stuff came from? Where do you think all the information for cloud computing came from? It came from industry. If it came from industry, it came from somebody particular in the industry. And so rule number 1 is if you didn't influence it, somebody else did, or at least they know about it before you did, because they're in under the tent in some form or fashion. And Jerry mentioned that there's people that you've done business before. The incumbent is already there. He's already there. He's already got relationships with the people that are there. So this is my rule. Jerry, you can dismiss that if you want to. But
well, you know, if you look at we always say go back and look at a forecast. All the agencies take a look at the forecast, and the forecast is now will tell you that there is an incumbent. But when you start looking at it, you have to remember that most of those contracts are 3, sometimes 5 years old.
At least.
So those people they're deeply embedded into the organization. So to drive them out, there has to be something that drives those guys out, because
That's right.
no one likes change. And it's better to go to Congress and say, I want the money for a contract that exists, and to go to Congress and ask for money for a contract that I might be doing. So there's this built-in thing that kind of makes you build your budget based upon what you did last time and throw in a little percentage to go forward on something. We're not seeing a lot of money for new programs in the administrative agencies within federal government, unlike DOD, which is a whole different animal. And most of the agencies don't have research money. So when you're asking for something, usually you're asking for what you need, not what you would want, not the future. You can see that a lot if you look at the IRS contract and how many times they try to do that and kick it out, and it keeps starting all over again. It's just hard to plan in within the agencies that way. But really, if you're gonna, I always say follow the money. If there's no money, why are you talking to them? If they didn't get any money in their budget to do these things, to buy from you, then really there's no opportunity there. There may be a relationship, but there's no opportunity. So you have to make a decision when you're talking to these people. Am I trying to build a relationship for future opportunities, or I'm going after a present opportunity? And that is a business decision that you have to make based upon your resources, because it's going to cost you either way.
It's going to cost you either way. And my philosophy, and this is where I look for the influence. I know verbiage gets installed in some of these statements of work, and this is where you can see the influence from competition. A lot of that has to do with the internal workings of the folks that are buying. We're going to talk about that too. But these are the things that you'll see that you can look for and say, who is this favoring? Is it favoring the incumbent? Is it favoring, maybe it's an IDIQ that has multiple awardees, right? That's a place where you can get in and inject yourself and play. And maybe last time they had 4 awardees, all you're looking for is them to have 5. You're not necessarily looking for them to just replace everybody. It's not necessarily a replacement game. And if you have the ability to compete against some of those folks with major IDIQs, that's some place you can play. We'll talk about that another time. But this is where you can look for your competition. And getting ahead of the RFP, being able to get in communication with the program and the contracting folks so that they know what you do. And, oh, by the way, sometimes ask for a sample scope of work or a past RFP that you have won. Why? Because they may be formulating that. And I know that you work hard against this kind of thing, but we see it all the time. We see it. And I know that it happens. And everybody does know. And we can also influence the procurement process. Jerry, tell us one of the ways, if you are a small business or a service-disabled business or a women-owned business or an 8A, that you should be going at influencing the process of how they go about buying. Tell us how that could work.
Well, that goes back to opportunities versus relationship. Yeah, opportunity is if they're already deciding what they're going to do and they put it out there for a bid, then that's an opportunity. But from the relationship standpoint, you have to sometimes look at what is the mission of that agency, what are they trying to do, where are their weak points, what did they ask in their budget even though they didn't get the money, because that tells you a lot when you look at their budget proposals. Then you say, okay, they didn't get money for this one, they got money for that one. You go back to the program management and you track the money back. That is how you develop that relationship, because I know you want to do these things. Even though you don't have the money this year, you will probably put it in your budget request next year. And it makes your budget request a whole lot stronger if you're also talking about the solutions to your problems when you ask for money than just saying, we got a problem. And, we got an old IT system. Well, okay, so what do you want to replace it with? What's the line items? What are you looking at? Are you looking to go, virtual? Do you want VPNs? Or do you have to lay out that solution? So as a company, when we would go to any agency and try and sell our product, which was voice over IP. We were developing early voice over IP out of an incubator site out of the University of Oklahoma, my alma mater, which right now we won't talk about. We have to discuss it.
Leave that
since I left. But the whole thing about the startup experience is something that I think is very important. Even if you already have a company, if you see a class, go to startup, because it teaches you about how to sell yourself before you ever produce anything. You might not have the inventory, but you can sell the process, the vision, and that's what you have to do. You have to sneak your solution into their vision, or you have to point them towards a vision which they can say, yeah, we want that. Yeah, we need that. That would make our job so much easier. So the relationship you're building is not with the contracting officer.
A lot of times.
That is so late down the road that you're just wasting time to get in there to do that with a contracting officer. It's the program management. It's the senior leadership that has a responsibility for making the strategic planning of the organization. Where do we want to take this organization next 3 to 5 years and 10 years down the road? That's where you incorporate yourself into. That's that relationship building you see. Especially within the Beltway.
Yeah. Now, some of those, real quick, Jerry, is some of those, I should have split that up into two different things. Absolutely, on the program side, that's a long-term piece. When it's time for this thing to go out, if you're a small business, anything below $150,000 is supposed to be set aside for small business, right?
Yes.
And also,
they do a justification.
That's right. And if there are the rule of two, if there's two or more, it can be set aside and just competed between those two. In some instances, if it's a woman owned and if it's a competed 8A, or it can be sole sourced to an 8A. There's a lot of things that can happen in the procurement process. There's different pieces influencing the scope program side, influencing the procurement process. If they know they know you and they like you and they're confident that you'll be able to fulfill the bill, they will set it aside.
But the key word there, it can be.
Can be.
Set aside.
Yeah.
It can be. And what you have to do is change that can be to it will.
There you go.
And then it will be me.
That's right.
That's
right.
It's nothing for you to go in order to set it aside and to give it to somebody else.
That's right.
You go, well, why am I fighting this battle?
That's right.
Well, you're fighting the battle, but you haven't lost the war yet.
That's
the war
right.
is getting to you.
But
you have to change that mentality that small business can't do this, and that's a lot of time what you're up against. A lot of time it's better to do business with who we know, and if we don't know you, then we will set it aside. But guess what? We're going to set it aside for someone in this program because we did work with them before. They have all the qualifications. So you got a lot of things against you, pushing against you. But you can break down all that just by going and making that relationship so that even though you don't have a contract with the VA, you don't have a contract with GSA, you have that relationship that they know that you are a good company doing work at the state level, city level. You've done work for this other agency. So that when the opening comes up and they can say, okay, we need to do something quickly. I don't need to do market research, but I need to make sure I've got a company that I trust and I know that's doing good work now and done good work in the past. That's when that relationship plays out, and that's when you can get the set asides or the sole sources to you.
There you go. Yeah. And the other ways are influencing the grading, because it can be lowest price technically acceptable, or it can be value based. There's a whole bunch of that where that happens as well. And I want to roll through this because I got a lot that I want to talk about too, and I'm loving it all the way. The biggest thing, and this goes exactly with what Jerry was saying, is positioning your company with the right people. These are the people, and he mentioned the program side, and I'm big on both. I'm big on knowing who the people are on both sides, and I'll tell you why that is. And this is the research that we've done as well. So first, who are these people? And I'm going to do this really quick. What do they do? How do they make decisions? And what do they need from you? This is it. Who they are, what they do, how they make decisions, and what they need from you. So first, there's three primary players in small business procurement. There are really two real players, but I'm gonna include these as well. These are called decision clusters. We have the program manager, the project manager, that's Ed. Then we have Jill, who's the technical representative, or COTAR, or CORE, or whatever the heck it is they do in the particular agency they have. And then you have Don, who's the contracting officer, or the contracting specialist, whatever you would call them. These people get together and are involved in a particular project that's good for you. Remember this, and Jerry alluded to it. There's different roles, there's different needs, and there's different buying motives for each one of these people. If you're pitching them all the same way, you're going to lose one of them. There's no way that you're going to get them all if you're pitching them all the same way. you may be pitching them on one particular. If you're telling a contracting officer how great you are and how good your widgets are and how Wizmo all your stuff is, that's all great and good. But if you're not, then they're saying, okay, you're not helping me because I don't know anything about that stuff. My job is not to do that. My job is to do something else. We'll talk about that. So the program manager, project manager, this is what we were talking about, driving the initiatives. What is important to the agency? What is their overall mission? And then ultimately, there's some other things that are driven down on them, maybe by the president or Congress or whoever it is. Green, cloud computing, security, all the things that happened because of 9/11. Cost cutting, cost savings with FSSI, which is killing people, by the way. I don't even want to go there right now, but the political ramifications of healthcare, things like that. All these are initiatives that are coming down. They look for new ideas, sometimes new technology. They are influenceable. Everybody is influenceable because we like to do business with people we like. The scope, the requirements, the capabilities, we want to make sure that we're getting that in front of them. Everything that we do, making sure that we're doing, and their job is to get the job done right. That's their job. Whatever it is, their job is to get it done right. Your job, and if this doesn't line up, I made this before you were here, Jerry. So you know, tie in with their initiatives. What's important with that agency? And your job is to help them look good. One of those has to do with their business. The other has to do with them personally. Helping them look good. Not hard to do if you're good at what you do. So the technical representative, very similar. They kind of bridge the gap between the program and the contracting side. They're looking to assemble the requirements. Oftentimes they are actually in the program chain of command. So they're helping with the requirements. Again, your job, help them with the requirements, help them look good. Give them what they need, right? Contracting officers. Now, these folks just move paper. I'm not going to diminish what they do. I couldn't do what they do because they're doing it. They got a lot of different pressures. There's a lot of things that gets whipped around there. They're busy. They don't want to teach you. They don't want to change. They're risk averse, and they're experts in moving that paper. Their job is to select the purchasing mechanism. Is it going out to full and open competition? Is it going to be set aside for small business? Is it going to be sole source? Is it going to be an 8A? If they set aside an 8A originally, it is never coming out of there. It takes an act of Congress to get that freaking thing out of 8A, just about. So the idea is once it's 8A, it's going to stay 8A. So you better have a plan if you want to play. You better have a plan for teaming. Sometimes they administer the contract post-award. They want the fastest way to purchase, and here's the key. Make it easy for them and value them. You do those two things, and you will win over contracting officers every time. Every time. If they need a standard form 1445, give it to them filled out. Boom, here's what it looks like. Copy and paste, do what you like. This is what it looked like if you buy it from me. Boom, you did my work for me. That's easy. And value them for that process. So who has influence? We have the administrator, the program manager, the project manager, the contracting officer, the technical representative. Those are the people that have influence throughout the whole thing. If you're talking about the administrator top down, you're talking about get to those guys so that you can get ahead, so they know what you know what they're doing, and you know where you can fit into their program. You get started lower in the food chain, program managers, project managers. And I'll tell you real quick about contracting officers and their value, especially on the smaller projects. And here's what it looks like. Less than $3,000. Here's the graph. So if it's less than $3,000, they have a lot of influence because they may be just buying that thing. It's those commodity type purchases. These are they're leaning towards the importance of small businesses in there, and certainly when it gets there, when you get to these mid businesses and big business teams, the political exposure goes up, and therefore the contracting officer is really a stickler on the T's and C's because they can get hauled in front of Congress. And I've seen it happen. I know that it happens. They can get protests and get all kind of political exposure that causes all kind of grief. So that's the value. So when we're talking about getting into and getting our feet wet and getting our wheels turning in the federal government, focusing on the left-hand side of this screen is where you're going to get most of your traction. So how can you find these people? Before you do that, any questions? I saw a hand raised. I see Bob Thomas. Hold on a second. Let me see what I got. Is this the webinar titled Disrupting the Pattern? Yes, it is, Bob. This is Disrupting the Pattern. And we're in the process of showing you how to do that. So We talked about it before, the who that matters to you. But I'm going to go back to the questions. Any other questions before we go on? We've talked about the pieces that are here, and Jerry, if you got to jump, I know we only had you roped in for a half an hour, and we're already well beyond that.
Well, before I go, one point I want to make where you're talking about, buying. Don't forget the people who just have credit cards who are not contracting officers. Millions and millions of dollars about every day across the federal sector with credit cards. And these people are usually not contracting officers. They don't have a warrant. They have a credit card. And some of their credit cards are unlimited. So if you're a small business, and that's a sweet spot for small business, to try and find out, who does the credit card buying if you're selling $3,000-$4,000 or below. You can do a lot of work in that area by just finding those people, and they are the people who usually are just asking for quotes.
Yep.
It doesn't take you a lot of time and effort and the resources to do it. They just need a quote of your price of your goods and services. Get to know those guys, because in a year they could spend $1 million on anything, buying light bulbs or whatever, buying toilet tissue for the facilities.
Toilet tissue, yeah, all that kind of stuff. And I couldn't agree more, Jerry, and that's why I put this back up on the screen, is that micro purchases, and you mentioned it, some of those folks have unlimited. They're not limited to $3,000. Usually there's when you get past 25, you generally have to have some pretty good paperwork. But when you're dealing with micro purchases, all right, Jerry, do you need a GSA schedule to be able to sell something via credit card?
No, you don't.
Does it hit FBO?
No, they usually don't.
They usually don't.
They usually don't. They're not required to put them out there. They post them. Some of them still post them on bulletin boards.
Where do they put what bulletin board?
I'm talking about physically putting paper on bulletin boards.
Or in their office.
Outside their office, they have a bulletin board, and they'll post it there.
Guys, I've seen this. I was down at Quantico. I saw it. Anything less than $25,000 had a physical pin in a piece of paper in a cork board. Who is going to see that? So answer my question. Where's that going? It's going to go to somebody they already know. And that sticking it on a cork board meets the criteria for public display. But you got to walk through that office to see it. So this gets back to meeting the requirements for the people that you're selling to, and giving them what they need in order to fulfill the requirement to meet the law. And the fact of the matter is, micro purchasers don't need a GSA schedule. They don't need anything. You can walk in and credit card swipe, whoop, you're done. So certainly, understanding who the credit card buyer is, very good advice. Anything else you would jump in before I start talking about ISI particular stuff?
For those companies out there who are already in the 8A program or any of those type of programs, or economic disadvantaged women, if you went through that process, and you can get through the schedule process.
Absolutely.
It's something that's, it's just some way of not being disqualified. If you're selling and they want to schedule holder, then you got the schedule. But I think that's something you really need to look at. If you went that far to get your company on 8A, then you should be looking at all the other avenues to build those other means of sales besides the 8A process. Because one thing that we're noticing with the 8A process is that the 8A process is not competitive. And the contracting officers are being told to compete contracts. As a matter of fact, we are actually rated on how we compete our contracts when we report them up to Congress. So if I have to compete as a contracting officer, I have to compete contracts, and you're in a program that's non-competitive, then I'm only going to use you when I have to use you. You're not going to be my first source. I'm going to go to the competition. I can compete in the socioeconomics and women. I can in service. I can compete in all those, but I can't compete in any unless it's in the millions and millions of dollars type of thing. So that in itself is almost a disqualifier for me unless I just need something that I have to have done so quickly, then I'll go to the NA program.
There you go.
What that is doing is restricting you being the first choice. So anything else you've got, like if you've got a schedule or if you got status as a vet or something like that, play up all the credentials you can, get all the credentials you can. It's just like having a driver's license for every state, so that you don't you can when you get a ticket there, you give them that license.
Yeah.
But you need to have everything you can, and there's nothing wrong with having multiple certifications. That's something you should look at wherever possible,
That's
and
right.
wherever the cost is not prohibited.
That's
So to that point, do what you can to make yourself always look good, and always keep in touch with those people, letting them know that I changed. And another thing, when you change something, change your business cards, change the contact information. People you've been doing business with, let them know I'm now in 8A program. I now got my certification as a vet. I now have my certification as an economic disadvantaged woman-owned business. Let them know these things, because a lot of times they're looking at how they saw you last time and not how you are today. So you
true
need to
enough.
keep those things updated all the time.
Qualifications updated is always a good time to talk to somebody. So Jerry, I'm gonna let you go because I know you need to go, or you can hang out if you want to. I'm gonna go through some of my stuff and some of the things that we look at and how we can help folks. So, but thank you so much for joining us. It was great.
Not a problem.
And I,
It was
what I
great,
love
Dave.
about it, we didn't script this. We talked what, about a week and a half ago. And I was like, you've got to come and talk to folks because he operates differently. He's one of the Oz the Boos that you can go to. He's going to tell you the truth. He's not just going to grab pieces of paper and shove them in your face. He's going to tell you the truth. And I appreciate it. And I just, thanks again. And I look forward. I'm going to be up there not too long. We'll wind up grabbing some something.
I'll buy you coffee.
How about that? You can do that. We both go to the pokey if I buy you coffee. You got to fill out like triplicate 25 pages. Chris Wegman has a quick question. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
Chris. Let me see if I can get you unmuted. Chris, you there?
Hi, thank you, Jerry. I'm sorry, before you run away.
Mm-hmm.
About the GSA schedule.
Yes.
If you get on the GSA in one place, I mean, we're a national company, but the pricing is different all over the place and according to routes. So if you just get on the GSA in one place doing something basic, does that work that you can compete on all GSA schedule items?
Well, you usually can. When you're talking about just, goods, it's usually a fixed price per unit, whatever. But when you talk about services are often driven by the cost in the area in which the service is going to be provided.
Exactly.
Now, you can make a baseline, but when you go to negotiate that task order,
yep.
If that task order if the place of delivery is going to be San Diego, the price point is going to be totally different if the delivery point is going to be Shreveport, Louisiana.
Right.
Because the cost of manpower, the cost of material, and everything will be different. So you build those things into the solution to the task order. And the task order often drives those price points. If you're sending stuff to the Gulf, or you're sending your widgets to the Gulf, it might cost you more, so you should be built in there so that you can recoup that cost than if you're just shipping them across within the United States.
I will add to that real quick. I'll add into that you got to be careful when you're negotiating your GSA schedule with your contracting officer from GSA, because they want to pigeonhole you into your pricing being locked in, and some of them do. And
that is one of the problems with the schedule when you're going in there. Pricing is the biggest issue in the schedule. Everybody produces their stuff, but people have different costs, and it depends on that cost drives your pricing and your profit margin. Yeah. What GSA tries to do is keep you from making 30-50% cost margin and keep it somewhere between 10 and 20. But if you're not making money off it, why would you even want to offer it?
That's exactly right.
So to me, from a business standpoint, what you need to do, and he's right, you have to make sure that your initial pricing gives you the flexibility so that you can adjust it, especially for services. So much for widgets, not so much, because usually, you can say, you got a 2-year, you come back, you can readjust that pricing, and it's almost like a slam dunk thing. There's not a lot of discussion about it. I'm going to mark it up the percentage that I'm allowed to every time I'm allowed to. But when you talk about services and delivery service in different locations, those things are usually negotiated in the task order. They look at the unit price, and then you have it written there where the negotiation of per diem, negotiation of travel expenses, and then, although you build your rates around Davis-Bacon or whatever, then you might hit some areas where that just doesn't apply all the time. So that's that negotiation that happens at the task order. Task order negotiation is very important that you understand that even though it's on your contract, that doesn't lock you into that price. You can always renegotiate it, and you can always walk away. No harm, no foul.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah, it's some good advice because you don't want to lose money. And the other piece is the rates that you provide and negotiations that you do in the front end. Make sure you leave room so that you can discount on. It's apples. They want to do apples to apples, but oftentimes it's very difficult to do apples to apples between commercial and federal services because of the FAR requirements, because of the Davis-Bacon rules. Well, all kind of stuff that happened there. So that's great. Did that help, Chris?
Yes, it did. It's this is the one thing I always ponder. So this is interesting to get both your point of view. We always go, when we bid something, the lowest price to make it work because we don't want to play games, okay? We just want to offer our best and go with that. But it seems sort of dishonest to give them higher pricing knowing that you're going to come down.
Well, no, it's not. Don't look at it that way. You look at the fact that you have to price yourself in a margin for your profit margin, understanding that there may come a time when you might have to lower your profit margin. So if you're splitting it up at 50%, you're probably not going to get the contract anyway.
No,
and because they're going to compare you to everybody else in the space. They're going to go out and look and say, what are we currently paying in this space? Who do we have on schedule? And what's the norm here? And that's what a lot of companies right now are getting kickbacks about, because, well, we can get this from company B for this price and company F for this price, and you're asking us to put you on schedule for this price, and you're just too far out of the range.
Yeah.
So there's a range there where you can go. And I used to tell people, if you're within 10% of your competition, then that would be my argument of why you should accept my price. I'm within 10%.
That's right.
Of their pricing. And they set their price 2 years ago or whatever, how many years ago. Things change. Things don't always get cheaper. That's the misconception in the schedule. And a lot of times when you're negotiating the schedule, it's that, well, last year we were paying $1 for this, and why should we pay you $1.50? Because things change, and here's why. This is better technology. These are better transistors. This is a faster processor. If you were buying something back then, technology does have its costs, and technology does not always make things cheaper. You pay a little bit more per unit because you're only going to use the same unit for the next 20 years, where before I could sell you the unit at half that price because you were buying one every 2 years.
There's a lot wrapped in that, and we can take some more conversation on that, Chris, if you want.
Yeah, that's a class you might want to offer, Dave. Pricing is so important.
It's critical.
Not what you get the contract for, but how you answer those task orders.
Yeah, absolutely. And the price, but I'll tell you this, if you go in with the best margin that you could possibly offer to the federal government at $100, you can't go to 110. It's really hard to go to 110. But if you go in at 110, it's really easy to go to 100.
Yeah.
So
and that's that's business. That's
right.
From an acquisition standpoint, I want to get you as cheap as I can get you.
That's exactly right.
From a business standpoint, I have to think of that I want a good business to stay in business. I don't want to drive you bankrupt.
And that's exactly why Jerry is different than almost everybody that I know that's doing this stuff, is because he understands business before he understands government. A lot of the folks in the government are like, well, you should be able to do this for 68 cents instead of $5. Well, who are you to tell me that?
I can't.
I
may sell it to you this year. Next year, I'll be in the bread line. But you do have to look at that. And don't be afraid of the schedule. It'll work as best as you work it. And sometimes you put yourself at a disadvantage going in to get it. But if you really look at it strategically, in 2 years when you can adjust your price, it may bring you up where you are. But you have to be able to hold that price line and stay profitable and stay in business for that 2 years before you can even start changing those prices. That's when the automatic, you can adjust the pricing after 2 years. But at that point, can you survive at those prices in which you're asking? Can you do business there? And that's why you have to know your business, and you also have to know what they're buying.
And
if you're only buying from me one time, I am not going to be able to hold that line for you for the next 2 years, because I have to make sales in order to compensate for that somewhere else.
And that's right. And there's times to walk away. We're over our time, and I do need to get.
I know you are.
Let me jump into this real quick about getting to the folks. A lot of conversation about the people behind the scenes. $307.1 billion in the next 204 days. That's how much money is going to get spent. And Jerry said some things that were really interesting about the way that money actually does get spent. There are opportunities, certainly, when it comes to September. And the fact of the matter is, if you're not in front of your DMs now, they're already buying from the qualified people who already are there, and they don't want to change. You have to give them a reason to change. If you're not giving them a reason to change and injecting yourself and disrupting the pattern of what they're doing, you're gonna lose. You're just never going to be able to get in there. So getting smart about the market is the best place to do it. I had some questions earlier. I'm just going to blow past all this stuff. I'm going to tell you about the webinar special. Market Essentials are the pieces. Some of the pieces that you've been looking at are things that we do to help understand the marketplace. I don't want to do a thing if I don't know where the money is. If you're following the money, Jerry said it, follow the money. Follow the money. And guess what? If you follow the money, what they did in the past, you will know what they're going to do in the future. Not only that, you're going to know who they're buying from, because they like to buy from people they like and the people that are already doing business with them. And you're not necessarily going after it to be a replacement. Maybe you are, and maybe you can, because it used to be an 8A and you're an 8A, and they've graduated and they're going to keep it 8A. That's another place to be able to do it. So with that, these are the folks who buy your stuff. We have a process, regularly $4,500, save $505. Market Essentials gets you those pieces, and this is different than anything you've seen. It's homegrown. We built it ourselves. Past 6 years, we've been working on this process, and we continue to improve it. We have some really good ones. Here's somebody that does a lot of work in the building space. Jerry, you probably know William Scotsman, and they're already successful. They dominate the market. 25% of the marketplace they have. They have salespeople all over the country, $80 million in federal sales. I would say they're pretty successful as a federal contractor. And they have all the regular databases. And we gave them 100% clarity into their space that they have never seen before, so much so that they changed their entire process. So $307.1 billion in the next, and 807, if you're not looking 2 years away, you're missing how the federal government works. All this happens in September. A lot of stuff happens in September. And let's go out and get some of that stuff. And if you need a little bit more help, how about you understand what the market is, but you say, hey, I got to get out in front of these people because I'm running behind the curve. Here's our way to be able to get you there. You find the people who buy your stuff and go after them. We dedicate some resources to go after those folks, doing the introductions and staying after them. Here's how it works. We get the Market Essentials package. We review your capabilities, making sure that it makes sense to both the program and the contracting side. We have an email process it's smoking. We have a smoking process where we do an introduction, a first follow-up, and a second follow-up, so that we're getting dialogue. When I say dialogue, I'm saying 8 to 12% right out of the gate dialogue from this process of being able to start shaking the trees and finding out who is buying what you're buying, but what you're selling. Because if like Jerry said, you don't want to hit them if they're not. But this helps distill the people that are buying to something that they have on their desk and a reason to talk to them. And we do that all inclusive. The other piece, that's both the Market Essentials and a blitz. I call it a blitz. Hey, let's get out there. Let's do it as quick as we can to make sure we're in front of these people. It's $52.49. And my suggestion is, if these numbers are shocking to you, then you need to revisit where you are in the federal space. Because the government does not operate like a commercial institution. Just doesn't. So anyway, go download the free ebook. It's on isifederal.com. It'll talk about, it's in our resources. You can download those. There's access to a lot of free stuff there. And it'll tell you why, what you need to do to be able to get there. Reach out to Revolution Payment Systems if you are doing credit cards. And we talked about credit cards a lot today. And the folks that are buying on credit cards, these guys, listen, if you're giving away 1% of the total that you could put, and let's say you're only making 10%, You can increase your profitability by 10% if you are doing if you're doing level 3 processing. You can increase your margin, your profit. Bottom line dollars, 10%. There you go. So the next webinar will be April 14th at 11 a.m. We'll continue talking about disrupting the pattern. I know we're over by 7 minutes already. And if you need to reach out to us, feel free to. And I'll be glad to pass on any information to get you in touch with Jerry. If you'd like to talk to Jerry, I'll include that. Here's my information, Jamie and Sean Jones, if you want to reach out for the Revolution Payment Systems. And with that, I'm going to let you guys go. Feel free to reach out. If you have any additional questions, there's some here that I will get back to you on. I just don't want to hold everybody up anymore. Thanks for joining us. See you next month and have a fantastic spring. Yes, we will do more stuff with spring. Thanks for being here, Jamie. Sorry we didn't talk about your stuff because Jerry talks too much. I'll talk to you later.
Hey, it's all good. It's all good.